selection or adjustment of the external factors. Hello and welcome to this talk. In the previous talks, we discussed how harmful emotions can arise and how understanding their background can help us manage them. Today, we are going to discuss another practical method, selection or adjustment of the external factors that may contribute to harmful emotional reactions. A simple method of managing the adverse effects of harmful emotions is to minimize the chances of facing events that could trigger them. This method can be applied in two ways. First, it may be better to avoid environments or situations that are likely to trigger harmful emotional reactions. Second, when avoidance is not practical, we can, if possible, modify those environments to reduce the mechanisms that trigger those emotions. For example, if a particular place is consistently associated with unnecessary arguments, we may decide to spend less time there. But if we have to remain in that environment, we may be able to change the way we interact with people or organize the surroundings so that the possibility of conflict is reduced. Understanding what we mean by environment. A comprehensive definition of the environment includes much more than the physical surroundings. It includes physical conditions such as noise, illumination levels, temperature, and the general arrangement of the surroundings. But the environment also includes social groups and their habits, behavior, attitudes, and many other conditions. For example, a crowded and noisy workplace may make it difficult for some people to concentrate. A poorly lit room may increase discomfort and irritation. Similarly, being surrounded by people who constantly argue, complain, or encourage unhealthy behavior can gradually influence our own emotional responses. There is another important aspect of the environment that is not always immediately visible. Past learned experiences can also trigger adverse emotions. In psychology, processes such as classical and operant conditioning explain how experiences can create learned associations and behavioral patterns. For example, a person who repeatedly experienced criticism in a particular type of situation may later feel anxious when entering a similar situation, even when there is no immediate danger. The original triggering factor may no longer be present, but the learned association can still influence the emotional response. Some triggering factors, therefore, may not be directly visible. However, a careful analysis of the records of our previous emotional events may help us detect some of these hidden factors. This is one reason why keeping records of our emotional experiences can be useful. Identifying the background. Once those environmental factors and clues have been identified, we may have to consciously examine the actual background that drives us toward such situations. For example, we may discover that we repeatedly become emotionally disturbed when we are exposed to a particular type of social interaction. We can then ask ourselves, why do I repeatedly enter this situation? What brings me there? Is it necessary? Could I approach it differently? Could I change the circumstances? Obviously, through proper analysis and planning, we may be able to avoid a reasonable number of such events. However, we may not be able to avoid all of them. Work, family responsibilities, social obligations, and many other circumstances may require us to face situations that we would otherwise prefer to avoid. But even when avoidance is impossible, there could still be a method of minimizing negative emotions by modifying the environment systematically. This is an important point. The objective is not necessarily to escape from every difficult situation. Instead, the objective is to reduce unnecessary exposure to emotional triggers and, where possible, change the conditions that make harmful emotional reactions more likely. General patterns in environmental factors. Although some factors that influence triggering mechanisms could be specific to individuals, several factors can have a general pattern that may influence many people. Therefore, these factors can sometimes be identified by acquiring knowledge available in the public domain. This is why the importance of learning should not be undermined. Learning opens an additional route to acquire knowledge about human tendencies that we may have inherited or developed without having to experience every situation personally. For example, we do not have to personally experience every type of workplace conflict to understand that unclear responsibilities, excessive pressure, poor communication, and unreasonable deadlines can contribute to stress.